In this video, we're going to be covering the while loop. The while loop allows us to execute a command multiple times without us having to actually type in the code to execute that code multiple times. So, for example, if we wanted to say hello world a set amount of times, we would have to go and say print hello world however many times we wanted. So if we wanted to print out hello world 10 times, we would have to go and print out hello 10 times. But using a while loop, we can get around that, and let me show you how. So to start off with, we're going to go and define a variable, and this variable is going to be our counter. And like all counters, the counter will be set to 0. And now we're going to go and define our while loop. And the while loop just uses the keyword while and then whatever condition we have. So we could say while the counter is equal to 0, we want to go and do something. So I'm going to put in my colon here, and then I'm going to print here, and I'm just going to say hello. And now if I run this, we're going to not quite get our expected output, but I'm going to run it just to show you what we do get. And we get this big long list of hellos, and I'm just going to clear this. And what's happening here is our counter is set to 0, and our statement here is while the counter is equal to 0, we're going to print out hello. So the problem we have here is the counter is always going to be 0. So for example, if I had this counter set to 1 and I went to run this, we'd get nothing as our output because our counter is never equal to 0. So this hello is never ran. But if I set this back to 0 and I run it again, we can see that we get multiple hellos. And this is because the counter just does not change. So we need to go and change our counter or increment our counter. And we can do this by saying counter plus equals 1. And now if I go and run this, we can see hello gets displayed only once. And this is because our counter is set to 0. While the counter is equal to 0, it's going to run this. So it runs this print hello, and we can see hello being printed out here. Then the counter is set to 1 because 1 gets added to the counter. And while this conditional statement is checked again, it's no longer equal to 0, so it doesn't print out anything. If I was to have a different condition here, if I wanted to say while the counter was not equal to 0, but while the counter was less than 10, and go and run this again, we can see that we get hello printed out multiple times. And if we count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we can see that it actually gets printed out 10 times. And if we were to change this 10 with a 15 and run it, it would be printed out 15 times, or whatever number we choose here. So I'm just going to set this equal to 3, and we can see hello gets printed out 3 times. And if you wanted to, you could set this number to something like 10, so it would print out hello 10 times, but you could increment your counter by more than 1. So you could say you want to increment it by 2 each time. So then only 5 hellos would be displayed. And then if you had an uneven number, so if you had something like the number 9, and you go and run this, you can see that hello is printed out 5 times. So just be careful that your while loop does actually exit, and you don't have an infinite loop like we had at the beginning, where we ran our while loop and we forgot to increment our counter, so our program just kept printing out hello and hello and hello, and eventually your computer or your program is going to crash if you have a while loop like that inside your program.